Okay, so imagine this. You walk into work at this massive global corporation, and you find out that overnight, the entire company has been, well, digitally erased. And no, this isn't science fiction. This is the real story of the day a single cyber attack wiped out over 200,000 devices at one of the world's most important medical technology companies. It's a wild story that really shows you just how fragile our hyper-connected world can be.
And this quote right here from someone inside the company on that day, it just perfectly captures the absolute chaos. You can feel the panic in those words, can't you? You have thousands of employees from Ireland all the way to Michigan just staring at blank screens, totally locked out. The entire global operation just slammed to a screeching halt.
And this is the number at the very center of it all. The attackers claim to have wiped out over 200,000 devices. I mean, just think about that for a second. We're talking about servers, laptops, even the work phones in employees' pockets. It was nothing short of a digital apocalypse for a $100 billion company. All right, so first up, let's just dig into the immediate aftermath and really understand the insane scope of this disruption. I mean, how does a company just vanish from its own network? So the story really kicks off just after midnight, US East Coast time. An employee tries to log in, but instead of the normal Stryker homepage, their screen is just plastered with a strange logo, a cartoon boy seen from behind. And then, poof, nothing. The operating system, all the data, every file, just gone. So the attackers themselves, they laid out this staggering picture of the attack scale. We're looking at operations in 79 different countries, forced to completely shut down. Over 56,000 employees around the world were basically told to go home because they literally couldn't do their jobs. This wasn't just some IT outage, it was total corporate paralysis.
Which of course brings us to the really big question. Who did this? And more importantly, why would they just want to cause pure destruction instead of, asking for a big ransom?
The group that took credit for all of this called themselves Handala. And that logo that employees were seeing on their screens, this young Palestinian boy who's a well-known symbol of resistance, well, that's their calling card. They were online almost immediately, taking full responsibility for the attack. But here's where it gets interesting. Security researchers pretty quickly pointed out that Handala fits the profile of what's known as a faketivist. And this is a really important idea. It looks like a grassroots activist group on the surface, but its actions are so sophisticated they point to something much, much bigger, a deniable operation that's actually being run by a government. In fact, multiple threat intelligence firms have drawn a direct line from Handala to Iran's Ministry of Intelligence. See, their whole game isn't just about hacking, it's about psychological warfare. They specialize in these huge, splashy breaches and dramatic claims that are all designed to create the maximum amount of chaos and fear. So how in the world did they pull off an attack on this scale? Well, the weapon they used was deceptively simple and absolutely devastating. Okay, first, it's really important to get this straight. This was not a ransomware attack. Ransomware is all about money, right? The attackers lock up your data so you'll pay them to get it back. A wiper attack is totally different. Its only goal is destruction. It's designed to permanently erase everything. It's just about sowing chaos. And here is the absolute genius and terrifying part of the attack. They didn't have to infect 200,000 devices one by one. No, they found a skeleton key. They got into Stryker's own administrative tool, Microsoft Intune, the very system that's designed to manage and protect the entire company's fleet of devices from one central place. The whole attack probably happened with breathtaking speed. First, they get into the network. Then, they escalate their privileges. They steal the login info for a high-level IT admin. And with those keys to the kingdom, they took control of Intune. From there, the final move was devastatingly simple. They issued a single command, remote wipe. And that command was instantly blasted to every connected device, turning the whole company into digital bricks in an instant.
So why? Why do it? Why take the massive risk of hitting a US medical giant like this? Well, the answer, at least according to the attackers, is all about geopolitics.
The timing here is, well, it's pretty hard to call it a coincidence. The attack on Stryker happened less than 2 weeks after the US and Israel launched major military strikes against targets in Iran. Handala came right out and said their attack was direct retaliation for that. But that still leaves a pretty big question on the table. Of all the possible companies they could have hit, why go after a company that makes surgical tools and hospital equipment? In their own online posts, Handala actually laid out the reasoning pretty clearly.
They called Stryker a Zionist-rooted corporation, and they specifically pointed to Stryker's purchase of an Israeli medtech company called Orthospace back in 2019. For them, that connection was enough to make Stryker a legitimate target in their cyber war.
Now, an attack like this wasn't just contained to computer screens. Oh no. Its impact immediately started to ripple out into the real, physical world, affecting markets, supply chains, and even emergency services. The first shockwave hit Wall Street, of course. As the news broke, Stryker stock took a nosedive, dropping 4.5%. You could see investors pricing in this massive uncertainty and, the enormous cost of having to rebuild an entire global IT system from the ground up.
Then came the supply chain problem. With all its systems down, production at one of Stryker's most important manufacturing plants in Cork, Ireland, just stopped. And this wasn't just a local issue. This immediately threatened the global supply of really critical surgical equipment for hospitals all over the world.
But this might be the most chilling consequence of all. A piece of Stryker equipment called LifeNet. It's what paramedics use to send critical patient EKG data from the ambulance straight to the hospital. It just went down. For a while, it was simply not working. Officials in Maryland actually had to put out an alert telling first responders to go back to using radios, which feels like taking a huge step back in time, especially in a life or death moment. It's just a really stark reminder of how these digital attacks can spill over and have a direct impact on our safety.
The Stryker attack really wasn't just about erased data. It was about an attacker turning a company's own protective tools into weapons. It was about blurring the lines between corporate IT and national security. It showed that in a modern conflict, literally anyone can find themselves on the front line, which leaves all of us with a really critical question. When the battlefield is digital, where exactly does the front line end?